Champions Mojo is part of the CG Sports Network.
Welcome to the award-winning Champions Mojo, hosted by two world record-holding athletes and health, life, and leadership coaches. Be inspired as you listen to Conversations with Champions. And now, your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Maria, are you ready to talk about self-care?
Yes, self-care. I'm excited.
Awesome. Maria, the term self-care is definitely a wellness buzzword for 2021 and is a really important component in overall health and wellness. And you and I are especially excited about this topic because we feel that this is something that we could both do better for ourselves. Would you agree?
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's something we've talked about this on the show, but I do need to work on self-care. So we both tend to push the envelope of our to-do list, and we love to care for others, both of us, which I know sometimes leaves my tank and your tank a bit depleted. So this is a topic we need.
Yes, I totally agree. So let's just jump right in and discuss self-care. And this show is going to cover why it's important, what it is and what it is not, what we can do to practice self-care. So Maria, why don't you start out with why it's important?
Sure. So first, on an individual level, if you want to achieve the most out of our lives, we need to be energetic, mentally sharp, and have a feeling of overall well-being and happiness. Through the practice of self-care, we can gain all of these advantages. One barrier to self-care is thinking that it's selfish, but it really is just the opposite, because if we can't take care of ourselves, if our tanks are completely empty, we certainly can't take care of anyone else.
And that's absolutely right. The research shows that women more commonly are the ones that feel we're being selfish if we practice self-care, because women, we're often the ones that are the caregivers, the moms. And so we feel like, making time for ourselves is going to take away from caring for others or our to-do list. So it does seem a little selfish. So that's one barrier for women. And another common barrier for some men is that it's not manly or macho. I was talking to my husband this morning about self-care, and, Mark does self-care, but I'm not sure he knows what the title of it is. So just in that specific way, he said, so, what is self-care? Is that massaging or sitting in the tub or, so we're going to talk about that later. But so if we can learn to get over these barriers and embrace the benefits of self-care, we can have the benefits. So Maria, what are some of the things that self-care is and is not?
Well, it's not numbing yourself with alcohol, food, excessive social media, or binge watching shows or movies. If that can feel like self-care because you're too exhausted to do anything else, but that is not self-care. It is engaging in activities that make you feel better about yourself, not worse. In other words, after you engage in self-care, and you got to remember this, after you engage in self-care, you should always feel better and not worse. Kelly, I know we're not in familiar territory here, but do you think you practice self-care, and how do you do it?
So I think that I have the idea of the knots, and then I have the idea of maybe I'm doing self-care in ways that I wasn't maybe aware of until we did a lot of research for this show. The way that I know that I have thought I was practicing self-care was to binge watch Netflix, and truly to hear that word that you said, numbing, I was numbing, during the time that I'm binging on, my favorite show on Netflix and just watching 3 seasons in a row, which I've never watched 3 seasons, but I've watched a season. And during that time, I'm not thinking about things that are worrying me. I'm not thinking about my to-do list, but after I am done, I feel like crap. Like during that actual time, it's okay. But then I'm like, oh, why did I do that? What a waste of time. It didn't, it wasn't sleep. I wasn't rejuvenated. I almost feel more exhausted. So I think that I thought that was good. So I'm glad we went over that. And then a self-care practice that I did this morning that actually, again, once we did the research. So, we have a pool in our backyard. It's a very little pool, but it actually, oh my gosh, it still allows me to swim. Did I tell you? Just really quick, it's not a commercial, but I got this thing called the swim tether, and it goes into your ladder hole, and I swim tied up instead of just tied to the side, which gets the cord in between your leg. It's up above you. So I've been swimming on a swim tether in our little pool in the backyard. So it's great. Anyway, so the pool is little, but we have had some really cold nights, and it's been like our water temps in the either high 50s or low 60s, which is pretty darn cold. And so Mark and I are out for a walk, and I said, oh gosh, it was pretty warm when we were walking this morning. I said I wanted to get in the pool and do what I call, kind of an ice bath or a cold plunge or cold showers. I mean, I love those. And Mark said, no, I just don't feel like it. And I said, but afterwards, don't you feel so much better? And he said, yeah, I do. So
did he do it?
He did not do it.
He didn't talk him into it, even though he acknowledged that, huh?
Even though he acknowledged that, but I always feel better after I do a cold shower or a cold plunge. So I guess that really does I feel better. It's anti-inflammatory. It's mood boosting. There's been a lot of research on cold plunging and cold showering, and we've talked about that before. But so there's my one that I was doing that was not, and one that I was doing that is, but that was kind of hard. So, I think, we're I want to look at, what it is and what it isn't. We're going to do that. But how about you, Maria? Do you think you practice self-care?
Well, no. I'm working on it and I'm becoming aware of it. I love the research about that we've got here about, or just this definition, I guess, that you should feel better afterwards. And I think that there are some self-care things that I do well, like I exercise daily, and I always feel better after self-care. I can overdo it, but I always feel better after I exercise. And I think some of the things that seem hard, you have to remind yourself how you're going to feel after you do it time and time and time again. But then there are some things that are more in the relaxation, but they still, make me feel better. And it might not be, numbing on Netflix, but for instance, and Jim taught me this, I'm still not really good at it, but Jim loves a nap. And, there are times when you just can't keep your eyes open, and a 15-minute nap, you wake up and you feel better. And so I mean, for our 35 years of marriage, I have resisted this because I don't do naps. But lately I have been like, when I feel that, just especially if I work out hard, when I feel that 2:00, I can't keep my eyes open. It's one of the reasons why I delayed our recording today, is I needed to care for myself by closing my eyes and just taking a 15-minute nap. So there's some things that are easy to do, I guess, in self-care. That would be my thing. There's some things that are easy, it's easy to take a nap, but it's necessary sometimes. And then there's some things that, you might say like that, I don't want to, get on the bike and ride that, but I know I'm going to feel better afterwards, and that's good self-care. And I love the idea too, like when I read a book, I feel better afterwards. When I do a meditation, I feel better. When I pray, I feel better afterwards. When I read the Bible, I feel better afterwards. So those are all things that I didn't really think about, but they're self-care.
Yeah. And I think this is great for us to identify that, we are caring for ourselves. Maybe we could do a little bit better. So, let's get into some specifics of like some specific details on practicing self-care. And, one of the things that we do as coaches is we curate information. So when we work with a busy client that just doesn't have time to look at 25 different articles on self-care or whatever they're working on, we do that. So we curated a lot of information on self-care, and we felt the best information today that we're going to share with you came from Tchiki Davis. She's a Ph.D. and she's the author of the book Outsmart Your Smartphone, and also self-care specialist Brad Krause. So Maria, why don't you start with, one of the first ones that we curated here for.
Okay, so so probably the number one thing, and again, this was an area that I really struggled with, because you got to make good sleep part of your self-care routine. I think a lot of us think we can cheat the day by, by staying up late or getting up super early. I used to just get up super early, no matter how late I went to bed. And it didn't pay off. Sleep can have a huge effect on how you feel, both emotionally and physically, and mentally. So, it can impact how sharp you feel, how your mood, and your physical, how you feel physically. And not getting enough can cause some major health issues, but stress and other distractions can wreak havoc on our sleep. So what do you do to make sleep part of a self-care routine? And I think that the thing you do is you start by thinking about your nightly routine. And a lot of cell phones now have those little, they tell you, like, you can tell it, I want to start preparing for bed at 8:30 p.m. And the phone will go into the nighttime mode and will remind you you're supposed to be getting ready for bed. So that's very helpful. Also, watching what you eat or drink right before you go to bed. It's especially important to stay away from caffeine and sugar for hours and hours before bed. And also, you got to reduce stress. So if you have work-related stress, let's think about ways to calm yourself. Kelly, you want to start with that?
Well, I think one of the things that just somehow I've never been great at falling asleep, and Dr. Martin Rossman, who we had on the show, offers free downloads of meditation videos. And when Dr. Rossman's voice comes on, I literally, put my phone and it just literally says,
he has a beautiful voice.
Meditation will take 20 to 25 minutes. I'm like, already the muscles in my neck are just. So I think, I do a lot of meditation and a lot of listening to meditative things. So I think sleep is huge. And
his recordings are so good because he there's no wrong way to do it. I mean, you be listening to him and he'll say, somebody might come into the room and that's okay. Or you might feel, stressed, that's okay. Yeah. And so also making your sleep environment, we've talked about this. We had a whole show on sleep. You can refer back to that, but making sure that you have a very dark room and a cool room will help you sleep.
Yes. Okay, Maria. Yes. So the second point that I would think is really important in self-care is taking care of your gut health, because, those good bacteria, the bad bacteria, they're finding they play a huge role in everything from your skin health, which we know is, always on my mind, that even your gut is connected to your brain so distinctly that it can play a role in depression and anxiety. So just taking a probiotic is a huge way for self-care.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say that be aware of how foods impact you after you eat them. It's easy to just eat and then 3 hours later, feel bad and not think about what you ate, how that might have impacted your body. Did it give you heartburn? Do you have gas? So, think about how food impacts you. Listen to your body.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Maria, this next one I know is definitely one of your self-care items.
Yeah, exercise. I don't do daily exercise anymore, but at least I don't do daily, like, intentional exercise. I do exercise every day, but exercise makes you feel good. I used to give this little speech about exercise gives you time back. One of the reasons why we might not exercise is because we don't think we have time, but exercise makes you so sharp and makes you feel so good that you actually are able to be more productive in the 2 or 3 hours after you exercise than you would be if you hadn't exercised. So really, really important for reducing stress and anxiety and just improving your overall well-being.
Yes, Maria, if we have any new listeners, which I know we get new listeners every week, that we have always been on that hobby horse of not thinking that exercise, if someone out there thinks exercise, they don't have time to exercise.
Yeah.
But that is something that you and I have both found, that when you exercise, you just get more energy. So if it's 5 o'clock and you have the choice of eating and sitting on the couch because you're too tired, your day is done. But if you just went for a 30-minute walk, then you might be able to write that paper that you wanted to write after dinner, or it just reinvigorates you. So I love exercise for self-care. And I do want to address what we talked a little bit at the top, that some of these self-care parts are hard and some are easy. So I think exercise is one that requires discipline. Ice baths or ice plunges require but you're always happier after you do them. So in fact, that's your famous saying, Maria, that I like exercise after I'm done.
Yeah. My dad used to say, it feels so good when you stop.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So
true.
my next one is it's kind of along the same thing, but eat right.
Right.
There's gut health, which are your good and bad bacteria, but then just eating right makes a huge difference. If you're driving through the fast food constantly or over carbing or over sugaring, but eating right is truly caring for yourself. And I don't want to, overdo that one because we've talked about that a lot, but that really is self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something to work on all the time. And then another concept for self-care, and this one is a really good one for me, is to say no to others and say yes to your self-care. So to do this, you have to remind yourself, and I've had to do this my whole life, is like, I am not the savior of the world. I am not, you do not need me, Maria, to do everything. I've always been the person who just volunteered. If I saw a need, it's probably part of my upbringing and just part of my genetic makeup that I want to help. And so if I see somebody who needs help, I volunteer, even though I have absolutely no business volunteering. And there's probably 20 other people who, if I would just shut up, would volunteer. So, it's really hard this will be a lifelong struggle. I'm turning 58 and I still struggle with this, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm starting to see, like, I didn't, I was telling you before we started, I had a person who kind of wasn't able to do her job in my other business. And instead of just taking over and doing that, I hired somebody else to do it, which normally, she was
You
only
said no to taking over another job.
Yeah, exactly. So it was only gonna be a temporary thing. I could have done it, but if I'd done that, then I would have had to say no to a lot of really important self-care stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm getting a little bit better at it, but there are a lot of people like me out there. I coach. I'm coaching 2 women right now who just feel like they have to do it all. So if you're in that boat, I encourage you, really work on this, because if you are empty, you cannot give.
Yes, and I want to tell a story as well, that if your 2 clients that you're coaching hear this, or someone else out there that's like, well, I'm afraid to say no. So I have somebody that I consider is a friend that I know. We have a good relationship, and I asked her to do something for me.
Yeah.
And she answered back, no, my schedule is full. I'm sorry.
Wow.
And I literally read that and I thought, good for you, girl.
Yeah.
I actually emailed her back and I said, I totally understand. No worries. I really love that you're respecting your boundaries, and thank you for being a role model for not overdoing your schedule, because that's like, I can say no, I think a little bit better than you. I don't say it probably as much as I want to, but this is a woman that is highly successful. She's, she is a real champion. And yet the way she said no to me was, and there's no excuse in it. Like, when you tell people no, and this is the way her email was, she didn't say, I've got 3 cats and I've got to take them to the vet. And I'm now, taking a class, and my husband and I are going to go on a hiking. It was just
no excuses. I'm too busy.
Excuses. It's just, I do not have time in my schedule, which I have no doubt that she probably doesn't have time in her schedule. But she just said, I wish you the best of luck on this. I don't have time in my schedule. And, thanks for reaching out. It was just a very friendly no with no excuses. So if you're out there afraid to do it, I get no's, and, it didn't bother me at all. So
yeah, I think people respect it, especially if you're professional about it and timely.
Yes. So
okay, what's another thing?
The 6th one, or I guess we are kind of numbering them, is taking a self-care trip, which is kind of cool. It's just like a little rejuvenation trip, and it doesn't have to be, a 3-day pack the camper. I'm not sure that, for me, that might be more stressful and not really self-care. But it literally, for me, a self-care trip used to be a trip to Starbucks. I'd sit out on the patio, I'd get one coffee, and I literally would listen to an audiobook. It was just like time for me. It was away from everything. So it was a little self-care trip. And then when I'm at the mountains, I have a little place in the woods. There's a bench deep in the middle of the woods on a creek. And I would walk to that. And, that's also one of our other ones, which is coming up. But, just, it does not have to be a big, huge trip. And it's being in that moment. It can be something, gardening, walking, just doing something that takes you out of your routine.
Yeah, I like that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a full-on 7-day trip to Aruba either.
No, there isn't.
Anything that you do that gets you away from your normal routine is going to help your creativity. It's going to build you up. You're going to come back just ready to do, hit your list. So I love this tip. And the next one is related. Take a self-care break by getting outside. We've talked about this, but going outside is so healing and restful. And even, I'm now in Massachusetts. We've got a foot of snow on the ground. And I find that if I can just get outside and walk, where it's safe to walk, it is so good for me. The light gets into your eyes. It just, I end up feeling so much better. I never finish a walk feeling worse than when I started.
Of course.
I mean, that sounds funny, but you think I don't have time for a walk. But, if you're stressed out or, the world is piling up on your shoulders, take 10 minutes, go outside, sit in the garden, hug a tree, be outside. And I promise you, you will have new perspective and that your cup will start to fill back up.
Absolutely. I we've talked about that one a lot. So I love it.
Yeah.
So, a great one, and it's the last one, is take care of yourself by getting organized. Like, there's nothing more valuable to me than when, like, my closet's organized, or my desk is organized, or my notes are organized, or my kitchen's organized. I really think that just makes one feel so much better. And you always feel better after you organize. And it doesn't have to be, a 3-hour chunk of time on a Sunday. It can be like, okay, for 10 minutes each morning, I'm going to go through my closet and give something to Goodwill. So I think of this one kind of as minimalism too, like having, having less clutter makes me feel better. That's kind of notorious.
Yeah. And, I think I really learned this as a technique in coaching. When you're trying, especially if you're trying to do something new, you really need to clear the clutter, clear out. And maybe it's physical clutter, maybe it's emotional clutter, whatever. You got to clear space for me, walking into, like, I always clean the kitchen at night before I go to bed, no matter how tired I am, because in the morning I need to walk into a clean space. And, Jim and I have talked about this over the years. He's not impacted as much by organization or clutter as I am. But he's learned that if I'm like away and I'm coming back, it has to be tidy, or it really stresses me out. So yeah, I think for me, this is good. I don't know if this is good for everybody. I know a lot of people this does apply to, though. So
it's now time for the takeaways. Maria, you and I have heard the takeaways are the best part of the show.
That's right, Kelly, because the takeaways are curated information, which is what we give to our clients when we coach them.
If you would like to take your performance to the next level in health, life, or leadership, go to our website and schedule your free 30-minute consultation.
Yes, just click on our coaching page and book there. We're looking forward to bringing out the champion in you.
And now, the takeaways.
So, Maria, since this is our own show, we are only going to do one takeaway. But before we do, let's just go over these, the 8 really quick that we went over, which is number 1, starting with, making sleep a priority. That's self-care, taking care of your gut health, exercising, eating right, saying no is a huge one. Taking a little self-care trip, taking a break by getting outside, and organizing yourself. So out of those 8 that we did discuss today, what are you going to really work on, Maria?
I love the take a self-care trip. It's something that Jim and I have done throughout our marriage. We've tried to have trips away, really away, like away from Wi-Fi. It's hard to get away from Wi-Fi in the world now, but really, really away. And we haven't done that for a while because we've been doing a lot of kind of, moving around and so forth. But I think my takeaway will be, and the fact that you can I mean, I think even one overnight, I do this for my kids, my adult children, I babysit for them and I say, go away for one night from your children, one night, because they don't like to do much more than that. And I think it really, they come back, they always seem to have a little bit of a bounce in their steps. So my takeaway is going to be take that little self-care trip, even if it's outside to the bench in the woods.
Yes, I love it.
How about you?
So I'm not going to pick one of the 8, but what I'm going to say I'm going to take away from this is that I'm going to schedule self-care time. So I think, we talk about how do we make things happen. And I'm going to put, you and I keep a pretty tight Google Calendar that we share. We share our Google Calendar with each other. We share our Google Calendar with guests that want to record with us. And we share our Google Calendars with our coaching clients. So we have, when I put something on my calendar, when you put something on your calendar, it is blocked. Like nobody can touch you during that time. So I am going to schedule self-care time. And I think that, a takeaway that I'm going to do. So
I like that. What are you going to do? What's your first scheduled self-care time going to involve?
My first scheduled self-care, I really think I need to schedule in more of meal planning. I know that's weird, but I tend to kind of just eat whatever's there. So I'm gonna use the eat well. I mean, I think I eat well, but I really want to maybe scheduling making a grocery list, because I would feel better after I did that, and that would unplug me from the internet, and I would just take a pen and paper and write, these are things that I'm going to eat that are healthy. And then I know that I would get them versus my husband falling prey to the buy one, get one free.
So you don't know how much of one thing you're going to have in your fridge.
Exactly. We're eating a lot of scallops right now.
Fortunately, scallops are very good for you.
I love them. But then we've also eaten a lot of other things too.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's good. And it's different from what you normally do. So.
And it would be something that would be on a list. Also, that's being organized.
Yeah.
I guess I like organization a lot.
Yeah, I do.
All right. Well, here's another one in the books. We hope that once you've heard this, you'll do self-care and you won't think that self-care is selfish.
It's not.
I love you, Maria.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast with host Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker. Champions Mojo is produced by Cabra Media, and a new episode debuts every Tuesday. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Follow Champions Mojo on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @Champions Mojo.